Well, welcome everybody to the Empowering Pastors and Leaders Training. We're very glad that you're here with us. We want to remind everybody that March 19th through 21st of 2018, can you believe I just said 2018, we have the Empowering Pastors Summit. You want to make sure that you're here. We're going to have Larry Stockstill this year. Bishop Thomas out of Margate, Florida will be with us again this year. And I want to remind you that if you sign up, you'll find that there's a spot for your wives, pastors, where we make sure that your wives are blessed. My wife makes sure that she takes them out, she honors them, she loves them, and actually the fee that it costs to bring her to the conference, we reinvest it into your spouse. Because many pastors' wives never, ever, 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 ever get blessed. So we want to make sure that your wife is blessed, that she is doted on, and that she's taken care of. How many of you, oh, I have such a young crowd in here. The word dote, how many of you know what that word means? Okay, just the older people raise their hands. Very good. Okay, we've been going through Samuel Chan's book. How many of you have been enjoying the book? Bigger, Faster Leadership. How many of you have purchased the book as of yet? Okay, one. Very good. That's not a lot of you. Listen, my notes are okay, but honestly, I don't cover majority of the stuff that's in the book. So if you're one that doesn't like to read or doesn't have a lot of time to read, I would encourage you to purchase it. You can buy the audio book of it and just listen to it. You'll get so much. So there's a lot available for you and I to be able to grow and to develop. This whole book is on systems and structures. And that's a big part because systems and structures are how our church grows. What are the systems?
What?
What's a system? How you do it. Very good. What's the structure?
People.
The people who do it. So the systems and structures, it's very important that we understand how these things are put together so that we can grow. Because if you have all the people, the right people, but you don't have the right structures, what happens? Failure. If you have all the right systems but don't have the right people, what do you have? Failure. So there's a necessity to make sure the systems and the structures are right in order. Now, we've done a lot. We've covered a lot of information over the last, I believe it's been 4 to 5 weeks with this one book. But today I want to hit it and then venture off a little bit and then come back. So today I want to talk about what you have to do, what's the bottom lines to bring increase. How many of you realize that if you're not increasing, something is wrong? There's a necessity to increase. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've been around a little bit of a time, and what I have found a lot of the excuses is they blame their lack of increase on the fact that they live in a small community. And I want you to realize, I don't know if you've ever heard of the town of Coudersport, Pennsylvania. It's in the middle of coal country. There is nothing there. But yet Pastor Miner has built a tremendous church. That's a powerful church that literally, he oversees, I mean, I believe in his late 80s now, he oversees pastors in New York City. His impact right out of a small town called Coudersport. We have a local guy here in the town of Troy, Pennsylvania. And what a tremendous man of God. Troy, Pennsylvania, I believe, runs no more than, I don't want to say any more than it's 2,000 people. But yet his church runs 500 to 700 people every single week. So this has nothing to do with the size community. This has to do with you and I making sure that no matter what size community we're in, there is growth. No matter what department we are running, there is growth. No matter what company we have, there is growth. Growth always shows health. Where there is no growth, there's a necessity to go back and look at where there is a problem, what needs to change, and what needs to be readjusted. Now, listen, every time that you and I start or have vision, we can't despise small beginnings. Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10, do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord will rejoice to see the work begin, to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel's hand. So there's nothing wrong with having small beginnings, but the issue is that if you believe that what God's given you as vision is truly vision, then it has to grow. Now, like I said, there are many that don't believe in growth, that don't have growth. And what they do is they just sit back and actually have abandoned vision. Vision demands forward motion. Management declares, I'm okay where I'm at. I'm settled where I'm at. Now, listen, I've seen this in churches of 50, and I've also seen this in churches of thousands. Because if you're a church of, let's just say, even 10,000, if you're a church of 10,000, you've been the church of 10,000 for 5 years, there's a problem. Now, we don't see it as that. We see it as, wow, that's a church of 10,000. But if they're the same number that they were for the last 3 years, well, then there is a problem, because that means that either vision has halted or there's a problem in the systems and structures to where they're not developed and growing more, and there's a necessity to get back to the basics. So we understand that the systems are how we do things. The structure is who is doing them. And the key to making it happen is the vision. Without a vision, my people, someone give me real quick what your vision is. Someone give me their elevator speech. What's the vision? Online, what's your vision? Elevator speech. If you do not have an elevator speech, you need one. What's an elevator speech? You need to be able to share your vision within 2 or 3 minutes. So since nobody has one, that is your homework for next week. Everybody needs an elevator speech. If I walked up to you and say, what's your vision? You should be able to share with me the passion that you have and where you're going with your department, with your church, with your ministry, with your company, and you should be able to sell me within the 2 or 3 minutes. If you can't sell me, then why would I ever want to participate with? This is very powerful. So there must be a 2 to 3 minute elevator speech available from you to be able to share with people the vision. For without a vision, the people perish. So there must be a vision. Now, in that vision, you have to launch. There has to be a launching. And that we went through this cycle. Every time you have vision, every time you step into where God wants to take you, there is a cycle of business. There is a cycle of ministry. This cycle is this: the entrepreneurial or discovery phase. It's the exciting, the beginning, the launching. The emerging stage, which is the growth phase, in which the vision begins to take definite shape and leaders are empowered and the organization starts seeing progress. Then the third is the established or the maintenance stage. And that is the phase in time when the leaders take a deep breath, enjoy their success. And this can also be a serious problem because some leaders take too much of a break. And when they do, they lose the handle on the organization, and it actually starts to spiral rather than continue to accelerate. The next one is called the erosion phase. And this is where every single business, every single church, every single ministry, every single vision comes to what we call what's this called? A plateau. Plateaus are not negative. Plateaus are positive because it means you've gotten there. The problem is not the erosion. The problem is how long you're going to allow the erosion to occur and how much is it going to deteriorate. Now listen, you don't even have to enter the erosion stage is if you recognize the plateau and have your plan to get off to go to the next one. This is where we continue to mature and to develop in where we are. The next one, and the last one, is called the enterprising or the reinvention. Every single time you come to a plateau, every single time you come to this erosion stage, you have to reinvent yourself. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you change the vision. The vision can't change. But it means how you work within the vision has to change. So there's a necessity to make sure that you're enterprising. Now, what I want to get into today is 2 basic principles that I believe are strong keys to growth. And a lot of times as pastors, as ministers, as business people, we know this, we talk about this, but it's almost avoided. And we've got to understand it. There are 2 principles. One is called acquisition and one is called retention. What's acquisition? What's retention? Keeping. The getting and the keeping. I want to ask you a question. How much growth can you have if you never get?
0.
0. How much growth can you keep if you never keep?
0.
0. That leads you to a bad problem. It's called 0. 0 means you're not leading. You're all by yourself. What does it John Maxwell say? A leader who what? How's it go? A leader who
Who has no followers.
Yeah, a leader who has no followers is someone just going for a walk. And so there's a need to make sure that you're not going for a walk. You want to position yourself to make sure that you are retaining and keeping. Excuse me, acquiring and keeping. So what I want to do is I want to talk about this out loud. I want to do some talking points, and I want you to give me feedback on your thoughts and your understanding. So let's talk about acquisition. Acquisition, and if you're in business, one of the things they ask you is how much money does it cost to acquire a customer? Now, especially with the internet and with television and with advertising, whether you like it or not, to get someone to come costs money. Now let's just talk church real quick. It takes a congregation up to about 500 people before they have to stop doing a lot of marketing. For the first 500 people, you have to market like crazy. Why is that? Well, because no one knows you're there. You can have the best authentic Mexican restaurant in the entire Horseheads, New York. You can have it, but no one's coming because no one knows it's there. How many of you know that in our community, there is an authentic, where are they from? Jamaica. Sorry. I was looking at the islands, just wasn't sure. An authentic Jamaican restaurant in our area, like straight up authentic. Do you know that probably most of our community doesn't know that they're there? They have amazing food. Have you ever had their fish? Their fish, you get an actual whole fish. Feels like you're back in Mexico. You get a whole fish, the eye and everything. And man, it just tastes absolutely amazing. Their food is over the top. It's called Taste of Jamaica. How many have ever eaten at Taste of Jamaica? Mm. How many of you have never heard of the name Taste of Jamaica? Yeah, people right in the room and never even heard of it. Well, why is that? Well, because whether you like it or not, when you start a business, there's a necessity of acquiring people. Well, acquisition costs money. Acquisition takes time. It takes the thinking through of a plan and a plot to be able to get people to come where you are. So I want to ask you some basic questions. Number one, how do you gain followers? So let's say you're a church or a business that's just begun. What's your very first step in gaining followers? What are you going to do? How are you going to start acquiring people?
Let somebody know you're there.
You got to do some level of advertising. What's the best ways to advertise? Word of mouth? It's actually, no, word of mouth is not the number one way. What's that?
Nowadays, it seems like Facebook.
Facebook is a good one. Social media. TV. What's another one?
Radio.
Radio.
Community events.
What's some other ways? Every one of these, there's something that you got to put beside it. Ready? There's a dollar sign. You like it or not, if you are unwilling to invest in your business, in your ministry, in what you do, you're not going to gain followers. There's a necessity to go out of your way to start marketing and advertising. When we started this church, one of the very first things that we did was I started taking out newspaper ads. Those days, the newspaper had traction. Whether you realize it or not, newspapers don't have traction anymore. It's one of the worst places to actually invest your advertising finances. And so we started doing ads in the paper. And one of them was, come to his tabernacle. We've reinforced the roof. Because everyone else says, I can't come because the ceiling will fall in. Then we did some TV. We did 2 TV ads. And here were the TV ads, right? One was this guy who was The music was rocking, bum, 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 bum. The music was just cranking, and the guy was on a bridge, and he was going to bungee cord. So he tethered himself in his harness, and he stood up on the balcony of the bridge, and he swan dives off, and it's beautiful. And all of a sudden, the TV camera shoots down to the other end of the bungee cord, and the realization was it wasn't tied. So all of a sudden, boom, and you hear thud, and it comes up. Got Jesus? You guys remember the Got Milk commercial?
Yeah.
Probably not the young people.
Yeah.
Got Jesus?
I remember.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
We had a huge amount of response from that because it was shocking. It was just a shock factor. Then we had another one with a guy that was in a casket, and they were doing a funeral. And he sat up at the funeral and said, "Got God?" So we did these commercials to start off for 2 months, and it cost a lot of money. You know, it cost out of our personal finances well over $10,000 just to do advertising to launch this church. But I'm here to tell you, it started the acquisition process. We started acquiring, and then I got a hold of the TV station, and I said, "We're launching a new church. You need to do something on us." They said, "What kind of church are you?" We said, "A non-denominational, we take everybody kind of church." And they took it as a very spiritual church. We let them take it any way they want, because all I wanted to do was make sure that when we opened the doors on the second week of February of 1998, how many of you weren't even born back then? You were too? Okay. That at 1998, that when we opened those doors at the Holiday Inn in Horseheads, that we were going to have people there. And that very first week, we had over 30 people come to the service. Now, remember, who you start with, you don't usually keep long. But that was the beginning of it. And we started gaining traction. We kept doing advertising. And then we started doing events. We started getting into the community. We started making ourselves known. In fact, back in the old days, 1998, 99, and 2000, back when they had cassette tapes. How many of you know what a cassette tape is? Okay, that's good. Yeah. We used to go to the mall right here in town, and they allowed us to rent and set up a booth in the middle of the mall, and we would hand out hundreds of preaching tapes as people walked by. All the way back in 1998, 1999. I remember going to the very first, you can come on in, we'll let you. The very first county fair. You know, they wanted $1,000 for the booth to go to the county fair. We had a kids section that was giving away bicycles, and we had face painting, and we had all this exciting stuff that was going on. People kept going by, and we were gaining people. We were gaining people. Why? Because we were where they were. We were in the acquisition or the gaining of people mentality. You have to go after people. They don't know you're there unless you go after them. So you have to be in the mindset of acquisition. So the question comes down to is, what other creative ideas would you do or have you used in your business or in your ministry, in your department, to acquire people for either your department, your business, or your ministry? What is it? Well, give me some.
So we're doing a visitor contest right now for 6 weeks, but the goal isn't just to bring somebody one time, it's to bring them continuously. You'll get more points. There's
A point system. What do they win?
They'll win a trip to Dave & Buster's in Syracuse for their group.
They'll win a meal at Dave & Buster's in Syracuse, which means we have to bus them or get them up to Syracuse. We're paying for the meal.
Yeah.
Paying for the meal.
Cheap.
How much is it?
Last year was only like $280.
So for $280, we're getting kids to bring guests to the youth ministry, and it's going to cost money. Listen, I don't care what you do. If you're doing acquisitions, it's going to cost you money. And you have to be willing to spend money to get people. Because if you don't spend money to get people, who are you with? Your mother, my mother's here. Your mother, your father, your sister, you know, you got your auntie, and you've got a family thing happening here. They got to come because they feel obligated to come. So what are you doing to bring acquisition, to bring people, to captivate people? What do you have? What do you have that, listen, the church is all over the place. What do we have that other churches don't have? What are we marketing? What are we doing to acquire? Josh, how many sign shops are in the area? 4 of them. How are you acquiring customers if 3 other companies are doing the exact same thing you are? Well, think of a short one as I go. How many insurance guys are in the area?
Tons.
Tons. How are you getting people to come to you?
Personal visits.
Personal visits. Somebody else. Jay.
Back to that question.
Yep, you got it.
I mean, my number one goal is service.
Service. But how are you getting them in to give them service?
Word of mouth. If we're giving other people great service that they're going to other people, that's why they're coming in.
Okay. Jay.
Boy, there's Google AdWords has been good to us. We've done some Facebook blasts. There's tons of different advertising and marketing. Yeah, direct mailing is a big one in the automotive industry right now.
When our church did Rock the City, we wanted to acquire people. What did we do? Well, we did direct mailing for over 4,500 of them. What else did we do? Social media.
Flyering.
What's that?
Flyering.
We did flyering. What else?
Personal invite cards.
Personal invitation cards. Video announcements.
TV spots.
TV spots.
So we call it kind of grassroots marketing, the events and stuff, kind of like the Easter egg drop would be one. We've had monster trucks and different things, but whatever you can do, kind of community outreach to get new people in there for a free event.
It's all about making sure that you get people near you. If they don't come near you, then you're not going to acquire them. What is it that you have that another church doesn't? What is it that you have that another insurance company doesn't? What is it that you have that we have all these people in this church, you need more people to work in your department. How are you getting them? Well, I'm waiting for them to come to me. You're a dreamer. People don't come to people. They don't just sit back and, oh boy, that looks like fun. I think I'll go ask Mackenzie. Usually the people that are doing that are people that, let's be honest, you might not want. You got to go after people. You got to acquire people. Now, the interesting part about acquisition is that process never ceases. If it does cease, what happens?
Go out of business.
You go out of business. Well, because you don't keep all the people that you've acquired. You can't always retain everybody. So there has to be a constant influx of people. You know, it's very interesting when you look at churches, the necessity, the actual average is that in retention, they say a church flushes 30% of their people a year. So every single year, 30% of the church leaves, whether it's because they moved, whether it's because they just fell off the map, whether it's because they got mad at you, they're no longer going to your church. So if your church is not increasing by 30% at least a year, you are now in the erosion stage, and you have to be move starting quick to get some acquisition. What happens in the majority of people is they get settled and satisfied and they stop acquiring. We'll use the word evangelism. Whether you like it or not, whether it's a business or whether it's a church, you're evangelizing. What are you doing? You're selling. You have to sell yourself. You have to sell to get people to believe that what you're doing has value and worth to where they want to participate. If it's a business, you want them to spend money where you are. What are you doing to acquire those new people? What are you doing on a consistent basis? What have you had to do to change? So let me ask you a question. What was the greatest thing that you had to change after you acquired your first group of people, but then you found that it slowed down? What shift did you have to make? What new ways of marketing, what new ways of acquisition of people did you have to move to? Everybody's staring at me.
Can you say that a different way?
Sure. In your initial, the vision has begun. You're excited. You're out there in the community. You're sharing the gospel. You're becoming visual. You've seen growth. But after, let's just say you get 50, 60 people in your church, you hit your first plateau at 70. Now, what are you going to do to reinvent yourself to where now marketing or your ability to acquisition or acquire people is going to take you to the next place? Because if you don't, you've stagnated. And if you stagnated, how long can you remain in that location before you start your spiral down? So Dave, he just acquired how many new companies? 4 new companies. Did they just pop out of the sky?
No.
No. What did you have to do to acquire them?
Internet.
The internet. So the internet, in what way?
They searched me on Google.
Awesome.
When I was being trained as a coach, they said one of the greatest things you can do for your children is buy their website. I actually that day bought every one of my children's websites. So I have all of their domains. Cody, I think it was Cody R. Spencer, Chad M. Spencer, and Corinne K. Spencer. So they all have their own .com. Well, why is that? Because as acquisition has changed, let's be honest, how powerful Google is. Usually we acquire a lot of people that actually find us via the internet. But let's break it down a little bit more. Let's just say you're a department head. How are you getting acquisition? How are you gaining people within your ministry? Response is necessary.
Leaders or like actual attenders?
Both. How are you getting, they have to attend before you can make them a leader. You're asking people? How are you asking them?
Face in a conversation, or if you see them at events that you're, for doing something and the same people keep showing up, and they might be interested in serving.
Okay.
So our goal is to have all of our teenagers come up and be a small group leader. At the end of the day, if we could have all of them, which isn't totally realistic, but we want to build people who build people. So we create almost a cycle.
Generational growth. Come on. Pastor Dan, what do you do?
Same as what Susan does. I go and pursue people that stick out to me, that are, are personal, ones that aren't afraid to approach people.
Okay. Pastor Obi, you're in a position where we just started the Bible school full time. And what did you have to do, and what have you had to do to gain students?
The biggest thing is a sliding tuition scale. Basically, there are different sorts of enrollment that would dictate the level of tuition that you pay, and that has helped. The biggest thing that we did this year is switching from semesters to trimesters. And that is going to be interesting to see how that turns out. But
how did they hear about you?
How did they hear about me? So I'm beautiful. It was a combination of social media and working with our current partnerships through this church. So the way that it really works is, a church that is connected to this, I liaise with them, see if they have a need or a void for Bible schools, then I pursue that relationship.
So there's a need to pursue. Now, let's talk about money. Your very first pursuing was going to Texas.
Correct.
How much money did we spend when you went to Texas?
Like $4,000.
$4,000. When you went to Rhode Island?
500.
Any other trips?
No.
So right now, to date, just traveling, it's $4,500 to get the amount of students we have now. That doesn't include the website. That doesn't include the paper. That doesn't include the brochures. That doesn't include other conversations. Everything you do when it comes to acquisition costs money if you're going to be able to reach into someone's living room, reach into someone's life, and what are you doing? You're trying to convince them. You're preaching whether you like it or not. What's the word preach mean? It means the ability to persuade. You're preaching to them a message that you want them to buy to participate where you are. So if there is no solid message, like you can't give me an elevator speech, if there is no something that is so gripping that's going to pull them from another insurance company, I mean, let's be honest, how many insurance guys are going to go house to house? Not many. So you're going to them, or you're going to do by phone call. I had an insurance guy that we just met with the other day because I wanted to find out where I was in the past. And it took me 5 years to get him to come to me. If I could cancel, I would. It's a non-cancelable situation.
We should talk.
We should talk. So here we are, whole life policy. Here we are, there's a need to know what you're doing. And if you're not doing anything, then what are you doing? You're only, let's just say you are retaining the majority of the people that you have. Well, the problem with that is, what happens if 30% of them leave? Now what have you done? You're not acquiring new customers. You're not acquiring new people. So now what are you going to do? This is that reinvent stage that's being talked about in the cycle of growth. There is a necessity not to wait till that point comes in your ministry, in your business. You must be able to have a plan that when that does come, you know how to get off that plateau as quickly as possible, so there's the least amount of erosion that's going to happen within your ministry, within your business, within your department. And if you don't do that, then you cannot be angry that people aren't coming. You know, there are churches all over here that are churches of 25, 30 people, maybe 40 people, and they've been that way for the last 50 years. Well, there's a problem with that. They don't see it as a problem. My favorite one is, well, we're just a deeper congregation. Oh, you're deep, all right. But it has nothing to do with Jesus. You're deep. The point is that the Bible says the whole job and the vision of heaven is that not one should perish, but that all should come to repentance. So there is a necessity to see salvation, to see health. People love seeing vision. People love participating with vision. People love coupling with success. You know, when we first began, I remember a couple that came in and we were at the Holiday Inn. I think at that point we had 25, 30 folk. They came in and they were from Waverly and Sayre. They looked really good. They dressed really nice. They sat in the congregation, and I went up to them afterwards, and I said, how did you like the service? They said, we love the service. And this is really close to us. I said, well, I'm excited. I hope you make this your home. And they said, oh, no, we would never do that. You're too small. And I said, but we won't always be small. Yeah, but you're too small now. We've traveled to Rochester. So was that their problem? Well, no. You can't acquire everybody, but at the same time, I could have done a lot more. I could have sold them the vision. And listen, within a year, we were over 100. We could have done this. But what's happened is, if you don't know how to acquire people, if you don't know how to acquire people to come and to believe in you, then you're going to be by yourself. Or you're going to have the same people, your mother, your father, your auntie, you know, your dog Skip. You know, they're always going to be there. There's a need to be acquiring consistently. So my question to you is this. What are you doing right now? What are you doing right now to get? What are you doing right now to get?
I just did tryouts.
Yeah, did tryouts? How did you get people to come to tryouts?
We did a commercial on it and like a Facebook graphic, and then a bunch of people just came up to me and asked me when they were.
Was it online on our website?
It wasn't on the website. It was on the Facebook page.
Facebook page.
Yeah.
Okay, so right there. Right? Somebody else. What are you doing right now to acquire? We are. Yeah, I'm looking at you.
We're doing video advertisement for the church, bulletin, Facebook page, Facebook event. We send our internship,
Facebook groups.
Facebook groups. We're sending interns to Elmira College and CCC to hand out invite cards, word of mouth.
Okay, somebody else. What are you doing? David, are you done acquiring right now for a little bit?
Yeah, still Google.
Still Google?
And Facebook's a big help.
Teaching in the school every week.
So marketing yourself? Somebody else? Jay, what are you doing to get more customers?
We're planning, we have that buy two, get two free tire sale every year. Tires are kind of our thing to get new customers. We give away the tires. So we actually lose money on that sale, but that'll generate us 400 to 500 new customers in one day alone. And then they come back for free rotations for the next like 2 years. So. Veterans Day.
And that's to get them in the door, right?
Yeah, that's mostly, it's funny that we don't get a lot of our existing customers, but it brings tons of new customers from all over the place for that sale.
So that's your number one way to acquire new people.
You know, I don't really know how to judge the Facebook. We've been doing paid Facebook blast and all that paid stuff, and I'm not super savvy with Facebook, so I'm kind of talking over my pay grade already. But that brings a lot to us, and if people check in, we give them $5 off, and I don't know, we've been getting a lot through Facebook with actual ads that we put on Facebook where they bring them in for deals. So we've been seeing a lot from that, but we're paying for that. It's not a free.
Right, it's not free.
Free thing.
Josh.
Going back to your question before, I think there's 3 important things that, whether it's in ministry or in business, that people are forgetting. That number one is centers of influences, to be reaching out to those people, business leaders or business owners, that'd be number 2, because they could be 2 totally separate different categories of people. And then 3 would be chambers of commerce, especially every county has a chamber of commerce. And in a chamber of commerce, what people don't know what it is, it's a business network of business owners. And if you get in with the president or the vice president, where they have different committees, they have steering groups in the chamber, and in every chamber that I've been involved with, it's a huge group of networking business people that can really help a business or even in ministry.
Yeah.
So
I'm actually reading a book by a guy named Rabbi Lapin. It's called Thou Shalt Prosper. And from the Jewish perspective, he said those 3 are huge. Also, like Rotary clubs. And I guess Jewish people, they pray every day at the synagogue together in the morning. And he said that's like an amazing place where a lot of business happens and a lot of like conversations.
Excellent. Somebody else. Ministry. What are you doing to acquire, Pastor Obi?
I've taken our big travel budget and I've broken up into little trips. So that way we're not spending any more, but we're doing more. So we're going to Rochester this week. We'll probably make a trip up to Syracuse by the end of the term, looking at like Boston, Rhode Island, a few other places. So that way our budget doesn't go up, but the number of places that we touch does.
Excellent. Very good. Somebody else? Anybody else? Great. This is where I think that we have to keep this consistent. And for me, as pastor, one of the things that I have found that over the past, because no matter what, if you're continuing to grow, you're going places you've never been before. And what's very interesting that I've always found is connecting to the right people gives you information and direction where you've never been before, but because they've never been here before, your location. And every location is different. Every area is different. Act differently depending on the arena of influence of the geographical influence that you live. You can do something in the South that will not work in the North. That's just a fact. We just proved that. We did something that worked in the South all the time, but did not work here in the North. And that's great. But the point is that you have to be on the cutting edge of constantly trying to find. Now, I know business people that don't, I know churches that don't have websites. When someone asks me, they say, can you help me find a church and a location? I said, absolutely. I'll get on the thing and I'll type up the name of the town and I'll type up churches. And without question, a bunch of churches' names come up. And then I'll look for a website. No website. Do you think I'm going to send someone to a church with no website? You and I have to remain cutting edge. Anybody who's not on Facebook, anybody who's not working social media, they're not good at acquisition. Because whether we like it or not, it is massive. And the influence is massive. I remember the very first time that I first recognized this was we used to, if we had, like, let's just say we had an ice storm or a snowstorm, we would try to tell everybody, let's say it was, say a Tuesday night, Rock Solid Faith Night. We don't want people to come because we don't want them to go out in the danger. So what we would do is we would turn around and we put it on TV, because you could put it on the WENY station. It would roll across the bottom. We'd send an email blast out. We'd call as many people as we could, but guess what? People would still come. When Facebook came out, we posted it on Facebook, and we only had to call one couple because I knew they didn't have Facebook. Two. Yeah, two. I'm sorry. I did text you probably.
No, I should.
That didn't have so bad, and you probably did show up. Now that week, no one showed up. So it was amazing to realize the power of media. And let's be honest, this is always changing. So you have to stay up on this, because ultimately, the day we stop acquiring or getting people, our business truly, it might not see it visually, but if you are not acquiring people any longer, you're not moving forward. You will start to decline, because not everyone's going to stay with you. Josh, has every customer you started with stayed with you?
Nope.
Nope.
One, right?
Wow.
Two people? Has everyone stayed with you?
The smart ones have.
The smart ones have. The truth is that not everyone who came to his tabernacle is still in his tabernacle. Dave, do you have every customer? No. Pastor Dan, do you have everybody that started in your department staying with your department? No. Pastor Obi, everyone that started Bible school finished Bible school? They will this year. We have tracking devices on them.
He's got one.
I want to ask one more question about acquisition. What did you find that you did that was detrimental to acquisition of people?
What was that question again? I'm sorry.
What was the number one type of, let's say, activity that you did that diminished people coming rather than increased people coming? Well, doing nothing is one. Anybody online want to throw in? If you're online, you can throw in too. Just we have somebody monitoring, so make sure you get on the live chat.
I would say being
Too vague? Boy, I don't even know how to spell vague. Spell for me.
V-A-G-U-E.
That's a good word. Being too vague. Yes.
Having a 12-week summer break.
12-week summer break.
Yes.
Promoting or advertising something you're not ready for.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really good one. Somebody else.
Being too persistent.
Too persistent. Very good. Pastor Dan, have you ever followed up on that?
He's in that.
Oh. Somebody else. What have you done that actually diminished instead of increased?
Got hired.
I'm confused.
Oh. No, sometimes it really does. It hasn't like happened yet, but if I didn't have a relationship with people, my criticism would probably push them away.
Okay.
Being too critical, I guess.
Too critical? All right, we won't put that up, but that's all right. Somebody else?
Letting an employee go.
Let an employee go? You need to go back and look, and this is where many times we don't like to take the time, or these processes aren't being thought about consciously. We just kind of do our thing on a day-to-day basis. But I would really challenge you to look over, whether it be your department, whether it be your ministry, whether it be your company, and look at what you have done in acquisition, what the costs have been, what your greatest influx was. I remember one year we had a banging Christmas. I'm talking, it was just packed out. Why was it packed out? we did billboards that year. The billboard was Pastor Jerry, who actually looked like Santa Claus. We had him dressed in Santa's suit, and we had a billboard with children, and we made sure it was multicultural. All the children around him, and the billboard said, even Santa goes to his Tabernacle Family Church. And we invited everybody out to pet his reindeer. We hired reindeer. We hired all these animals to come in. And Santa went from children's room to children's room saying, listen, Jesus is the answer. He went and preached the gospel to all the classrooms. Moms and dads loved it. The kids loved it. You know, you always got to get a few, you know, folk that are really religious, really angry. Some of them were, but they were okay. They made it through. But all in all, that was a huge influx. I remember one lady telling me, my wife and I were on a billboard one time, and she told me, she said, I almost crashed on 352 because I swear to God, your eyeballs followed me.
I always think the same thing with that.
Yeah, that was bad. My eyes stretched on that one. That really bothered me. So, what are you doing right now? What have you done? And what are you doing right now to acquire new people? Now, the Bible school students, what this has to do and where you have to apply this is someday you're going to be doing a ministry, whether you're a department head, whether you're a pastor, in some level of leadership. You need to know that this is a major part of your life, not a minor part, but a major part of your life. Because if you cannot acquire new people, you are in the erosion stage and you will die. The next one is called retention. I personally believe retention is harder than acquisition. And I personally say that. Do you want to know why I say that? Because my personality is more charismatic. I love evangelism, but I'm really not a great manager. I don't like to manage. Remember the difference between visionaries and managers. A visionary sees to the future, goes to the future, comes back, picks up his manager, and brings them forward. A manager makes sure all the order is right here. Everything is in order. Everything is running well. The systems and structures are working, but they only go to where they are. They never go forward. They'll just maintain what you have. That's a maintenance person. And there's nothing, you have to have both in every ministry and in every business. You have to have them both because the visionary many times is great with the bread, but bad with the peanut butter and jelly. So the question is, how do you retain people? Once you've got them through the door, how do you retain them? Now, as I've gone and sat with different pastors and ministers and leaders, one of the things that I find, no matter how big the church is, and I was with a church down in Florida that runs 3,500 people, a very successful church, very successful pastors, and we actually paid them to sit down with them and ask them these specific questions. What is the number one problem that you have in your church that you're trying to fix? And their statement was the same as ours: retention. Closing the back door. Filling the holes of the bucket. You can say it any other way you want. The point is once you've acquired, your goal is to keep them. If Jay had 500 new customers come in for the tire sale, but not one of them returned after the tire sale, he lost money. He gains money by them coming back. If you're in car sales, it's called be-backs. You don't want to just sell somebody a car. You want to sell their mother a car, their father a car, their Uncle Harry a car, their Aunt Lucy a car. You want to sell everybody a car in their entire family. You want to get be-backs. So that means you better do really good. What I have found for myself, one of the number one reasons of the lack of retention is the lack of relationships, connections. It was interesting as we're sitting down with this pastor of a church of 3,500, he actually hired a man just to do this job. His whole job was connections. And he said, I hired this guy to do this job, and I looked at him and I said, you have 1 year. If we have not retained more people last year than this year, then you've lost your job. He said, I don't care what you do. I don't care how you do it, but at the end of the year, we better have kept more than we lost. I haven't been back, so I don't know if the guy still has a job or not. But, you know, it's very interesting because this is a major part of every business, every ministry. You have got to keep customers coming. You have got to have them not just be there once, but continual. This is a problem in American churches where now the average church person goes to church once out of every 3 weeks. That is a serious issue. That is not a small issue. That means they haven't bought the vision. That means they're not consistent in the vision. That means they're probably going to go look around at other churches. Well, why? Because you have not connected them. A church that doesn't have strong connections is a church that won't retain that individual. The actual statistics are if a person comes 6 weeks and they have not made a connection of some type, they leave. So every church has the same issue of retaining, generating enough connections to where people feel that this is home. And if that cannot be acquired, then you do not keep the acquisitions. You have to amp this up because this back door is so wide open. There are so many holes in the bucket. You're losing more water than you're keeping water. So my question, what are you doing in your ministry, in your company, in your church, online? What are you doing to retain people, to keep people? Go.
Personal service.
Personal service. What does that mean to you?
That means, I would call it a lot of touches, not just business touches. Just stopping by to say, how are you? How's the family? But when they need something, I am Johnny on the spot.
Okay.
That does not mean a phone call or an email. That means I'm on your doorstep. You need to, you know, I mean, in my industry, you need to change a beneficiary. I am not going to do that by email unless somebody is, quite far away. I'm going to, even though that's not a place where I make money,
right?
I'm going to go to them and I'm going to do that.
That's the service
in person.
That's the service. Now, why does that keep somebody close and keep coming to him? Because if you got to call a man for 5 years before you can get him to come talk to you about your life insurance, you don't want to keep him.
Pastor, I was just actually with somebody this morning who is actually looking at churches, and they've been to 2 churches in this area, and they are hopefully going to be coming with me in a couple weeks. But they were so turned off that the big church they went to, they liked the church, they liked the worship, they liked the pastor, but she said, nobody talked to us. And she now feels disconnected to that church, and she'll probably never go back because not one person said hello to her. Now, I've learned from experience here at his tab, people like Cody and Mindy and Chad are, as soon as people walk through the door, and there's other people too that do a really good job, they connect, they look them in the eye, they try to shake their hands. I know maybe for women it's not as comfortable for a woman to shake a woman's hand, but people want to feel important, they want to feel connected, and I think it's huge, 3 to 5 seconds when somebody comes through that front door that they feel that. Maybe the message stinks, maybe the worship is awesome, but they're gonna, once they connect to somebody coming through that door, they'll always remember that more so sometimes than the message or even the worship. So we have
so many people actually that say the reason they're here is because the first person they met was Pastor Dan.
That's the same in the business world. We have we actually had our computer software company give us a separate, we call it owners notes tabs. But anything about that owner, where they work, what they do, if they had a sick grandma, or if they had a name for their car, just something to kind of make more of a connection than just, hi, can I help you today? If one of our guys knows something about that customer, or it goes all the way through it though. It's a little more personal than just.
And that goes to every department too. I remember when I brought a guest and they actually had kids and they took them to the children's department, and the children's department was extra accommodating to the husband and wife and the child. that was even bigger to them than the greeters at the door or to this, assistant pastors or whoever it was that was greeting them. The person in the children's department was so accommodated to their child. They only had one child. To them, that they were sold on the church.
On the church.
Not that they were trying to buy.
No, I understand.
That's
What about your business?
My
How are you
business-
keeping people that are coming in and getting a poster made? How are you keeping them? How are you going to get them back to buy the next poster?
Jay says that he makes extra posters for those people. No. Hopefully it's just, a sincere smile in a relationship. Take Brittany, for example. I don't think Brittany's, she's came in a couple times, and she came in recently just to bless us with coffee, although it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but it was still.
Coffee's good.
The gesture was really nice, but she felt comfortable coming through the doors, whether it was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 8 o'clock in the morning. She really felt, besides blessing us, she felt comfortable walking in. So I guess if you can create that comfortability with every single person that walks through the door, where it's not doing business, and they really are doing business, then
Well, let me ask you a quick question. When you walk into a place for the very first time, is it the personal connection or the environment that touches you first?
personal connection.
Personal connection, environment, environment, and then personal connection. So what I want you to do also for part of your homework next week, if you have a business, I want you to ask 2 people what their initial response is when they've walked into your business environmentally. Yours is a little bit difficult to do that, Dave. I understand. Yours is for those who don't, and maybe you're part of this ministry, or maybe you're Bible school students, I want you to walk into our building and tell us environmentally your initial expectation or your initial feelings. All of this is about retention. Acquisition and retention. The more you retain, the more your church grows. The more your company grows. The less you retain, the less you grow. If you acquire nobody, and this is where a lot of churches are, they acquire no new people. So they can simply step into maintenance mode and stay maintaining those same people. You can do that and you'll feel comfortable doing that. But the problem is, if one dies or leaves, you're on the digression. This is something you constantly want to do, is constantly build in the organization. Wow, it's already been an hour.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Here you go. What is your retention rate for this year, 2017 already, in your ministry or your business? What is your retention rate? Be-backs. People that have been through the door more than once. With WordPress, one of the things that we look at for success is how many pages do they visit? And I believe it's the same with the internet, correct? With the website. It's not just a matter of somebody coming and looking at one page. You know you have acquired them if they're starting to look at the multiple pages. If they're looking at more than one page, and usually what they're actually teaching, I believe in the website, I don't know if it still is, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't want to go more than 1 tier deep. You try not to go more than 1 tier deep, because most people will not go deeper than more than 2 tier. So when I'm looking at my WordPress and the people that look at my WordPress, the one thing I always look at is how many pages did they hit? How many blogs did they go to? Because if they've just gone to the one blog, okay, that's good. But if they've gone to 2 blogs, I know they're coming back. I've hooked them.
It'll also count how many clicks of different things on each page. They'll go to.
How many clicks on each page they'll go to. So what is your retention rate? Now, people don't like to look at this because it can be depressing. But if you're not real with yourself on your retention rate, if you're not honest with yourself, then you can't fix anything. If you don't fix it, then you can acquire as many as you want, but the back door is still wide open. So at what rate are you increasing? At what rate are you either acquiring and or what? Losing. If your losing is greater than your acquisition, then you must look at your systems and your structure, and you must see where there must be adjustment. Because if you are losing more than you're keeping, there is something desperately wrong with your systems and your structure. And either way, you can go back and tweak it. It doesn't take a lot. Listen, most of the time, adjustments don't take a lot. It's not a lot of adjustments. One day I'm riding down the road on my road bike, my bicycle, and I'm trying to break my time from the last one. Going from church to home is almost 14 miles. I believe I'm ascending almost 1,000 feet in my ride. And on the way home, it's very hard to break 14 miles an hour because it is inclined the majority of the wise. On the way here is easy. I go 21 miles to 22 miles an hour on the road. No problem, because it's got that slight decline. There you go. So the question is I want to beat my time home. So I'm going, man, and I'm working, but I'm not going that fast, and I'm working hard. And it was a hot day. And I kept hearing zip, 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 zip. And I know what it is. My front brake got knocked. And it's not on. It's just rubbing. Whether you realize it or not, all I had to do was get off my bicycle for a second. I had to just take my brake and slide it over. And then all restrictions were gone. And I went a mile an hour faster. You might say a mile an hour is not a lot. Well, it is on a bicycle. It is a lot. But I changed everything by taking the time to get off my bicycle, which it would have been easier to stay on the bicycle because I'm clipped in. My feet aren't just on, I'm clipped in. And I got off the bicycle, and I fixed the brake, and then I went a mile an hour faster on the way home. Listen, that is a win. If you are unwilling to look at your acquisitions and unwilling to look at your retention rate, then you will never know whether you're winning or losing until all of a sudden you're in that erosion stage and you're losing money, you're losing people, you're not increasing, and hopefully you have enough vision to be frustrated. So I want to challenge you to do that. Does anybody have any questions? I thought this was a good one. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed this one myself because I believe that this is really where the rubber meets the road. This really is. A true visionary is always driven by production. They want to see movement. And you can have all the acquisition you want, but if you have no retention, you're not seeing production. So there is a necessity to be honest, to deal with it, to grow with it, to tweak it. It usually doesn't take a lot to be able to make sure that you accelerate to the next level. Don't stay on the plateau long. Reinvent yourself and go further. Anybody have any questions, thoughts, declarations online? I pray this helped you. It's good stuff. If you do the homework, it will help you. If you don't do the homework, it will not help you. You've just wasted an hour of your life. You have to do something with what you got. And it'll take some time. Anytime you want to increase, it's going to cost you time and money, period. You aren't going to increase by accident. This has to happen. So evaluate yourself. Evaluate. And if you are in the place of too many holes in the bucket, you need to ask what kind of holes need to be filled so that you can bring it to the next level. Okay? Awesome. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. And everyone have an amazing day.
Yes.